Congrats on getting beyond 1 million. What got you here won't always get you there. This is a podcast for entrepreneurs who want to reach beyond their 7-figure business and scale to 8, 9, and even 10 figures. I'm Brad Weimert, and as the founder of Easy Pay Direct, I have had the privilege to work with more than 30,000 businesses, allowing me to see the data behind what some of the most successful companies on the planet are doing differently. Join me each week as I dig in with experts in sales, marketing, operations, technology, and wealth building, and you'll learn some of the specific tools, tactics, and strategies that are working today in those multi-million, 8, 9, and 10-figure businesses. Life can get exciting beyond 1 million. Brian Scudamore, it's awesome to see you, man. I appreciate you carving out some time.
Hey, Brad, good to see you virtually, but I know I'm coming to your city next week. So it's great to catch up and honored to be on your podcast.
Yeah, it's great, man. So let's jump into a little background. It's been a few years, but I met you through Cameron Herald ultimately, and you guys go way back.
Mm-hmm.
But well before I knew either of you, I knew 1-800-GOT-JUNK.
Mm-hmm.
Because I saw the trucks throughout my life everywhere. Growing up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, far removed from where you were.
Mm-hmm.
And you founded that and grew that to great scale. So can you give me a little backdrop on that and how you got started there?
Yeah, I was one course short of graduating from high school and was looking for a way to pay for college. I happened to have been coincidentally in a McDonald's drive-thru of all places, and I see this beat up old pickup truck in front of me with plywood sides built up on the truck. It said Mark's Hauling on the side. And I just looked at that truck and I'm like, that's my way to pay for college. I bought a pickup truck, started hauling junk a week later. My company was called the Rubbish Boys. And ironically, what funded my college education inspired me to drop out. I was simply learning much more running a business than I was studying in business school, and made the bold decision to leave. I sat down with my father, who's a liver transplant surgeon, and said, Dad, I'm quitting school, man. This is not for me. I'm learning more doing this versus studying. And he didn't think it was a great idea, but certainly is on board with the decision today.
Hold on. So you left high school before you finished?
I was one course short of graduation from high school. I then found this business to pay for college, and I had to talk my way into college. So I remember 3 conversations with the admissions office, and I'm like, I know I don't have a high school diploma, but I don't need one. I can do this. And I guess persistence paid off and they let me in. But again, ironically, I didn't complete. I've done 14 schools from kindergarten through to college. My only diploma, true story, not trying to be funny, is I only have a kindergarten diploma. I do not have high school. I do not have college. True entrepreneur that was better learning on the streets versus studying in school.
I have so many questions about that. I do want to get to business, but I think this is super relevant. So, you have kids, yes?
I've got 3. I just dropped one off at college across the country yesterday. Not easy,
Well, any of your kids, if they were in high school with one class left to graduate, would you encourage them to drop out and pursue business?
I don't know if I would encourage them to, I don't think I'd push them into dropout, but I'd push them into what's their passion, what's your plan, why. If I look back at myself at 18, sitting down with my father, I think I had a good plan and good reasons. So if I was my dad, I would have supported and encouraged Brian's decisions, if you will. And I've never asked my kids what they want to be when they grow up. I've never suggested what university I thought my 17-year-old should go to. I didn't help her apply. I didn't do anything. I want them to learn on their own and be bought in to their own decisions. And I think it's the commitment that really matters. Commit to a path. I committed to dropping out and adding trucks. The second I dropped out of school, the first thing I did out of university was I went and added a second truck to show my dad that, listen, I'm serious here about growing this. Added a truck the next year, the next year, the next year. Today, we've got 2,000 or more vehicles across Canada with 1-800-GOT-JUNK. We've got Wow One Day Painting, our second brand, which is painting people's homes in a day. And we've got Shack Shine, windows, gutters, power washing, and Christmas lights. So that whole concept of just, I'm going to do this. I'm going to show my father. I'm going to show myself that I'm committed to the right path. These overnight success stories sure take a long time, but we did it.
So since you jumped to the brands and the number of trucks, where did 1-800-JUNK go in terms of revenue and headcount?
Mm-hmm. Took me 8 years to get to $1 million in revenue, which is sort of, as an entrepreneur, a young entrepreneur, we often set that as the first benchmark. Mm-hmm. And 8 years to get there was a long time. Our franchise owners, our first franchise owner, Paul Guy in Toronto, who does over 100 million in revenue today, he did $1 million in his first full calendar year. So way faster than I ever did, but it was because we had systems, our franchise program, to say, Paul, follow this recipe. And the recipe was young and not completely proven after the 10 years that I created it, but he helped make it better and help shape it for others who would come. It's interesting. I was part of an organization which many of your audience members might be a part of or have heard of, Young President Organization. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I joined and I sat down with a bunch of people, very curious, and I would ask these other presidents, what's the easiest and what's the hardest? $1 million in revenue, 10 million, 100, $1 billion. And all of them, without doubt, surprised me in the answer. And they said $1 billion is the easiest, $1 million is the hardest. I was like, why is that? Well, the first $1 million, you're trying to figure out the bottom line, the profit model, the business model, the customer model. There's so much to create and understand and lots of mistakes to be made. Once you start to get bigger, 10 million's easier, 100 million's even easier. You build a team. If I look at us on the road to $1 billion across all three of our brands, we're about 600 million in 1-800-GOT-JUNK as the biggest brand. We've got a team in place where I am so disconnected from the day-to-day, partially by choice, partially by focusing in my sweet spot of where I excel. And it's become big, and we've got a great team, and you trust smart people to execute for you. So it's interesting that it does get easier.
I love that. Okay, so let me back up to college. Why did you go to college? If you dropped out and said, hey, I've got one class left, but I know what I want to do. I want to move shit in a truck.
Yeah.
Why was the next step to do college at all versus just continuing on that path and building it out from there while you were learning?
I think it was what you had to do. I look at my kids and I look at my teenagers who are, one's in college now, one's talking about college. It's what all their friends talk about. And what did my friends talk about? What university are we going to go to? And it's just what you did. I didn't know different. And so my father, as a liver transplant surgeon, did a lot of school. It's just how I grew up, that you save your Christmas gift money for university. Even though that's not really what I did, that's what I was told to do. So college just seemed like something I had to do until I had the guts to drop out and to challenge the status quo. So, the only regret I have is that I didn't do it sooner. It was not the right place for me. I learned by, and I still do to this day, I'm a lifelong learner. I learned by conversations like this, by talking to people, by we talked about Roy H. Williams, the Wizard of Ads, who I'll be meeting with next week, who's co-author of our books. I learned so much from him as a mentor in marketing every time I see him. So to me, getting out and learning wasn't through school. It was through people, through the streets, through mistakes, failure.
So social construct. You felt like you had a social obligation to do the college thing.
That's all it was. That's all it was. Yeah. Which is why, I say to my kids, or say to myself, I don't ask my kids, are you going to go to college? What college will you go to? I don't want to put that pressure on them. They've already got enough societal pressure. I want them to figure out what their path is themselves. I'll encourage, I'll cheerlead, I'll help guide and answer questions, but I'm not the one bringing it up. And right or wrong, it's worked for our family.
Do you have parallels between how you run the family and how you run the company in terms of those elements, following your passion, your desires? Like where's there are some companies that are structured where there's sort of iconic brands, the Googles that allocate a certain portion of the time for people to pursue their own projects, right? Or I just
finished Chip Wilson's book about Lululemon. And he had this huge drive in the beginning to help people develop as humans, right? And follow their own passion as humans, whether it was inside or outside of the company, ultimately. So you talk about your family and not forcing them into frame. How do you think about that from an operational structure perspective inside of 1-800-GOT-JUNK and the other brands versus, being good humans and doing what you want to do for your own life?
Yeah, I think you can blur the lines a little bit between family and personal and business. And it's funny you bring up Chip Wilson. I talked to him last week. He's a local Vancouver entrepreneur, probably the most successful we've had in this city. And it's interesting because Chip has done, I think, a great job with his family in bringing goal setting and vision to his kids, not just his business. And so I think I've done a bit of bring some systems that you would have traditionally in the home to our business. So a daily huddle. We have a daily stand up or virtual now with the way the world's changed, 7-minute daily huddle. The entire company, we're all on Zoom, people asking questions, people sharing key numbers, missing systems, where we're stuck. It would be like the dinner table, 6 p.m. traditional dinner of, hey, honey, how was your day? What'd you learn? What kind of challenges? And we do that as a company. 7 minutes a day, we gather and we talk. And so goal setting is a big thing that we ask people in our company. What are your 101 life goals? What are your goals and dreams that this business has nothing to do with, but could possibly help you achieve? And you'll get someone who says, one of my goals is to see a Super Bowl game. Great. We happen to have a business in the city that's hosting the Super Bowl this year. Let's see if we can try and figure out how you could use the business to go do a field visit with one of our franchise owners and go to the game. So we want to cheerlead people on in life with what are the goals that they want that will make a difference for them. We had a guy, Jeff Gontovanik, who started in our trucks in London, Ontario, 15, almost 20 years ago. And this week he opened up his first business for himself with 1-800-GOT-JUNK. He always wanted to be an owner. And that was a goal, start my own business. And we helped make that dream. He made it happen, but we had a bit of a vehicle to help him. Love seeing our people's dreams come true. And in the same way that Chip Wilson wants to make a difference in the world through athletic yoga wear, it's us doing it through junk removal, house painting, window washing. We're changing people's lives for real.
Yeah, that's great. So from let me back into some of the nuts and bolts of 1-800-GOT-JUNK and try to pull that into practical application. So sounds like a franchise model. And I know some of the basics, but how did it start as a franchise, or how did you get going? When you say 0 to $1 million took 8 years and was the toughest, was it different then? And what was the pivotal point there?
Yeah, it's a great question. And one of my favorite ones, how did it become a franchise? I read a book by Michael Gerber called The E-Myth. And the E-Myth is the entrepreneurial myth. Many of your audience members would have read it. If they haven't, please go out and buy it. I don't get a cut on Michael's book, but it's the most impactful book I've ever read in my life. I read it twice in one sitting. And what Michael says, and Michael's become
hold on. You seriously read it front to back twice without getting up?
I'm not a reader. So I read this book and I was just like, this is unbelievable. I could see how my business needed to shift and change step by step from that book, that I had to read it again and then start marking up the book. I was on a beach. I remember I was on a beach reading this thing and I just didn't get up for hours and read this. It's a little book, but it's fantastic. So Michael Gerber says, and I have adopted this philosophy, people don't fail, systems do. We blame people in our businesses all the time for effing up, for making mistakes. It's not the person. There was a missing system to blame. Why didn't we have a step-by-step process that would set that person up for success? Think McDonald's. You know that those fries, it's not up for debate. How long do you cook them, for a minute or 3 minutes? It's like a certain amount of seconds. You press a button, the buzzer goes off, time to take them out. How do you set up systems to set people up for success? So in the beginning with my business, it was really taking piece by piece, everything we did, from how do we price jobs, how do we answer the phones, how do we show up and greet the customer, everything was put into a process of here's the best practice we know to date, how to do this. And it became very consistent. And we started to look, feel, and act so much like a franchise, the uniformity of it all, that I said, we've got to look at this as a model. So that book inspired me to look at the franchise model to systematize my business. But then I adopted it as a way to scale. Now, franchising, Brad, is not an easy model as a franchisor. Most franchisors fail way more than any other business would. Not the franchise partners, but the franchisor who goes, I'm going to scale this across the world. They dream big. It's expensive. It's hard. And it's hard if you don't pick the right people. If you don't pick the right people, the whole thing implodes. I'm wearing today my It's All About People hat, because that's all it's really about. Find the right people and treat them right. And we scaled this franchise organization over the years from, you mentioned Cameron Harold. Cameron came in when we were 2 million in revenue. We went to 106 million in revenue in 22 years. Sorry, 22 years, in 7 years. And it was fast. The reason I said 22 years is Cameron sent me a photo today. He goes, look at this from 22 years ago. And it was me as the best man in his wedding and his groomsmen all lined up. And I'm just like, man, time flies. But yeah, 106 million, an increase of 105 million in 7 years was unbelievable. But we did it because the systems allowed us to scale.
Yeah, that's awesome. So at what point in revenue and or headcount, and both are actually really interesting to me, did you make that decision that, hey, this is the path forward for growth?
Yeah, we were one office, 1 million in revenue. I had my ops manager, Paul Guy, who was running the business. And I said to Paul, what do you think of, you're going back and forth across the country to Toronto. Why not start the first franchise? And you're visiting your girlfriend there all the time. It's a great city. It's a big one. Let's give it a shot. And he started the first franchise. And that was my commitment. I knew that he did a great job running my Vancouver business. I'm sure he could do a great job running his own with the systems that he'd learned. And he killed it. As I said, 1 million in his first calendar year. And so that was the commitment. Everyone wanted to follow Paul Guy's success. If we did not hit a home run on our first franchise owner, this whole thing, you and I would not be talking about this today. We would not be talking about the growth and success of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. We got the first one right. Everyone wanted to follow. Not everyone was successful in the way Paul was, but we started to learn, how do we pick and find the right people who are very similar to Paul and his business style.
And what are the economics of that?
Well, Paul, so with our franchise program, we say people should make 18 to 22 percentage points on the bottom line. And so as they build and start multiple franchises like Paul did across North America, 100 million in revenue times that profit margin is pretty healthy. And so These people have built great lives. And what's interesting about the franchise model, you get a lot of entrepreneurs that go, no, I want to create my own thing. And the question I say is that really in your personality? Is that really what you want to do? Is that really the best model for you? So I'll compare and contrast for a second. Myself, I needed to blank sheet it. I wrote a book called BYOB, Build Your Own Business, Be Your Own Boss. And that's my current book. And I talk about these two different options, I think, of building your own business. Do you need to blank sheet it like I would? Are you a person that goes, I love cooking. If I go to the internet to find a recipe for inspiration, and I never follow that recipe. I customize, I adapt, I tweak, and I often fail. And then I try again. But I want to and need to create something from scratch. Then you have an entrepreneur type who goes to the internet and goes, yeah, I want to bake a cake. And they find the recipe and they follow every measurement to the T, step by step, the amount of time, and they get success. They don't need to experiment. They just want proven results. I talk about in the book Shaquille O'Neal, who got to meet a couple of years ago during the pandemic. We had lunch together a couple of weeks ago. And what I love about him as an entrepreneur, not just a sports legend, is Shaquille O'Neal. I asked him, why did you get into franchising? He has $500 million in wealth from franchising. He said, Brian, it's a no-brainer. He goes, think about sports, leadership, following the play, building a team, cheering each other on, winning, celebrating. He goes, isn't that what a franchise is? He goes, I don't need to be the guy building the race car. I just want to drive the race car. And so he's taken these different franchise recipes and put in the right people, coached them, cheerleaded, let them go and be successful. And he's amassed a massive empire in franchising. Now the guy's a DJ and spends all his time as a sheriff, a DJ, all sorts of great, crazy things. But from a business perspective, he's figured out what model works for him.
What are his franchises?
He's got Auntie Annie's Pretzels. He was a part of Five Guys Burgers. He had Krispy Kreme donuts.
Crazy.
All over the place. Like, I mean, he really has amassed a massive fortune. Big Chicken is a new one, which he's actually partnered with the founder and creator of that business to be a franchisor and a franchisee.
Crazy.
It's magical what he's done. He really, really has done well.
Okay. So, back to 1 million to 2 million was the first franchise. So you functionally doubled the business. 8 years in, you double the business with one franchisee who was your operations person at the time.
Yeah.
It sounds like immediately after that, you hired Cameron Harold to come in for operations.
I tried to hire Cameron Harold. He said no.
Okay.
We were in the same entrepreneur organization forum group. And he's like, dude, I would never work for you. Are you kidding me? And I'm like, why not? And I don't know, I can't remember the moment I convinced him, but he came on over after he was done another gig, and it was awesome. It was, I mean, absolutely awesome.
I think that's a really valuable lesson for me, and I think note for other people, which is a lot of the time when you look at great people, it's scary to approach them or audacious to approach them and think that they would work for you and come into your company, specifically when they're entrepreneurs, when they're doing their own thing. But the right vision, the right relationship, the right communication, clearly you can execute that.
Yeah, the key word that stands out for me there, Brad, is vision. So I've got something I call the painted picture, and Cameron would call it the vivid vision. Doesn't matter what it's called. They're both the same thing. And that's starting with a vision. A picture of your future, what it will look like in 5 years, how you will act, how you will show up in the world, what your goals and dreams are. And it isn't really just a dream. It's we will make this happen. In fact, if anyone in your audience wants to see one of our painted pictures we use for our business, happy to share. They can just send me a note on any social media and say, can I see your painted picture? But where that started was 7 years into the business, 8 years into the business, when I was at $1 million in revenue. I went to my parents' summer cottage and I was in a bit of a doom loop. I said, we're at $1 million in revenue and I'm not happy. I can't see the future that I could grow this business. I don't have the money. I don't have the education. I'm a high school, college dropout. I shifted my mind to a positive place. And I said, hold on here. I'm going to take out a sheet of paper, sit on the dock of my parents' summer cottage. And I started to write. And it was like a Jerry Maguire moment, if anyone's seen that movie. And it was, we will be in the top 30 metros in North America by the end of 2003. We will be the FedEx of junk removal with clean, shiny trucks and friendly uniformed drivers. We will be on the Oprah Winfrey Show. I listed all these words that turned into a picture that took the entrepreneur's vision and gave it to others. And people would see this and look at it in my business and say, wow, that's unbelievable. And half the group thought it was unbelievable and wanted to stay. The other half said, Brian, you're smoking hope dope. I'm out of here. This makes no sense. Going from one city to 30, Oprah, the whole. But we made it happen. And it was the vision, the painted picture that got Cameron excited, that got others excited. So yes, as you said, we can recruit these amazing people that we think we have no chance of recruiting, as long as we inspire and lead with vision. And as long as they can see what we see, not how to get there. That's not what a vision is, but that they can see that's where we're going and we get to figure this out together. So
you bring Cameron on. Tell me about your sales process from 0 to 1 million. And then let's, skip the gap to Cameron comes on. You figured out that franchising is the path. What were you doing to sell and to grow the business from 0 to 1 million? And how did that change once you moved into the franchise world and got Cameron on and started to go on this next growth path over 7 years, where the first 8 years was 0 to 1 million, the next 7 was to 106 million?
I don't know if it changed as much as it got better. It evolved. We got more aggressive with it. We did a couple of things, and I mean, it really falls under the guerrilla marketing side of the business. So from the consumer marketing side, it was having our trucks be big, massive billboards. We'd park them around town at busy intersections, and people would see 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And they'd pick up the phone and they'd call. We'd have guys out wearing these blue wigs, standing at busy intersections in the morning during rush hour traffic, waving, showing off the trucks, showing that, like, we're here ready to take your junk. Give us a call. The press. We went after the press really hard and started storytelling. So in the early days in Vancouver, we were on the front page of our biggest local newspaper, front cover with our truck and our phone number. We started getting on news shows, breakfast TV, the whole bit. When Cameron came on board and we decided to, again, it's not that we did much differently. We just got more aggressive with it and found a winning formula, was pitching the press, telling our stories, getting free press over and over and over, but with much bigger media hits. Oprah Winfrey, Ellen DeGeneres. We went after CNN, Wall Street Journal, New York Times. I mean, you list the media outlet. We made it happen because we just decided we had a story to tell. And we got really enthusiastic and energetic about getting out there and telling that story. So Cameron and I would smile and dial, pick up the phone, a sales process, and say, I got an awesome story idea for you. I got some great news. And people would say, let's hear it. And it was amazing. I mean, it really, you can imagine the number of phone calls when we were on Oprah. Every hour as the show went across the country on that day, we got phone call after phone call where the phones would just light up for days. And that momentum built. And 35 million people watching Oprah was incredible. But so was CNN. So was Wall Street Journal. So it was going after these things that didn't cost much money. They just took a creative, energetic storytelling tactic to break through.
That's fascinating. And so the story was the story of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. The story was sort of the growth of the company. Is that what you were pitching?
The story was different stories at different times. So the Vancouver Sun, where I live in Vancouver, it's where the company's head office and where we started, they probably have covered us 40 to 50 times. Wow. And I'd say half those stories have been the same story. A guy starts out of college, dropout, beat up old pickup truck. Like, we used to joke, we're like, why did they call it the news? Nothing's new. It's the same story. But people forget stories. The news has a hard time finding news stories. So they repeat things. So the story changed from guy drops out of college, starts a business, local success story building really quickly, cleaning out a hoarder on the Oprah Winfrey show. Like, even us getting on Oprah became Canadian news, where other news outlets are like, look at this little Canadian company that landed the mother of all media hits. We would position the story based on what's going on. You know, we had an 80-year-old, 85-year-old woman. We were cleaning out her junk, and we found this diamond ring. We pull it out. She's like, oh my gosh, that's my wedding ring of my late husband. I've lost that for 30 years. Like, you just find these moments and you go, these are stories that we're going to get out there and tell. And for your people listening and watching, we are in the storytelling age. We have never been in an age where we've heard, told, and consumed more stories. You know, what are most people doing in their breaks between every moment they've got in life, standing in line, scrolling through Insta, Facebook, TikTok, whatever it is? Those are stories that they're consuming. Getting out there and telling the right story. Everybody's got a story to tell. Everybody, every business, every leader. You've got leaders out there getting vulnerable and telling deep, dark secrets because people want to know. They want to hear them. So whatever it is that will get out there and get people consuming more of your business and feeling connected with you as an entrepreneur, it's a great thing. So storytelling, PR is an unbelievable outlet to help build a business.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting one. I want to dig into that a little bit because I know that Cameron and Adrian ended up writing a book, Free PR, probably largely founded on his experience with 1-800-GOT-JUNK.
Yeah, of course.
How much of your time was spent as the CEO and founder, and how much of Cameron's as the COO? How much of your time was occupied in this PR initiative?
It was a big portion of our time. I mean, it would also shift. When we went out with this Blue Wig initiative, it started with the Canucks, our hockey team that's never won a Stanley Cup, but they were doing really well one year. Their color was blue. So we went out and bought blue wigs, and we got everybody in the company to wear blue wigs out in the trucks, out in the office. And we said, we're just cheering on the home team. And the press, we called them up and said, this is what we're doing. We've mandated people have to wear these crazy, silly blue wigs. And people did. We ended up on the front page of our local paper again. We ended up we went down to a Canucks game and started giving away blue wigs to everybody in the stadium for free, these $3 blue wigs. And the whole stadium's wearing these wigs. And we had the 3 biggest news stations at 6 p.m. interviewing myself, Cameron. Cameron would be on a couple of phones at the same time interviewing as he's getting a camera on him, talking to radio. I mean, it was nuts. So we would execute after the pitching of the press, and we would find people out there who were great at picking up the phones and saying, I got an awesome story for you. And I still do it today. We had CNBC filmed a TV show on us during the pandemic that has yet to air, but it's exciting when you get out there and get this stuff and you go, it didn't cost us a penny, it cost us our time. And so the more storytelling we can do, the better. We just won Newsweek's, one of Newsweek's most loved workplaces in America. All those little awards, they're not for our egos, they're for more storytelling. And it's just getting the word out there over it. We're honored that we won that award, but now we can tell all these great stories.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So you spent a ton of your time doing that then. And I can see a logical path when you're going 0 to 1, 1 to 5 or 10 to invest, specifically 0 to 1, invest a ton of time in quote unquote free PR. Fast forward to, a $600 million company that now has, how many franchisees do you have?
250.
250 franchisees. Do you do paid ads? Do you do, what is the current marketing mix for the company? And has that changed at 600 million versus at, 1 million?
We do. We probably do a bigger mix of paid than free, but it doesn't mean that I believe that's the right mix. What happens is Roy Williams would say, as you build a business on free press, once you can afford it, you keep that momentum going through paid advertising, like radio. I can't remember how many millions, tens of millions we spend on radio now, but we do. We get out there in a mass way because it works, but it does have a hefty price tag to it. So it's layering on top of all the success we've had, but I think we can do, and this is a failure, a miss on my part. We've got to get back to more free press, more TikTok, social media storytelling, like this kind of stuff. I mean, talking with great people like you've got a big audience. You're going to share these stories. Other people are going to share them. We are in the storytelling age. I've said it so many times, and we need to play that up. So while radio is great, when someone hears a radio ad, it's an ad. When they hear an interview like this or watch us on some business TV show, we find great franchise partners that want to start their own businesses, that want to be like Shaquille O'Neal because they identify with our story and our connection, and they know it's not an ad. If it looks like an ad and sounds like an ad, people will treat it like an ad. If it's a real organic story, I mean, just look at Instagram, right? When you see sponsored, it changes your opinion of that information. And so tell great stories. I can't emphasize it enough. I mean, it's how people stand out. You've got a mohawk. There's a story behind that. You stand out. You're unique. You're different. You own a space that others don't. By the way, I had a mohawk during the pandemic. I made my son a bet, and he was 7 at the time. I said, this hair is starting to look crazy during the pandemic. I need a haircut. If you pick the winning haircut, you can do it. And he goes, mohawk. And I go, done. And so I had my 7-year-old give me a mohawk, and he actually was a pretty good barber. But it lasted a couple of days before I just felt like, this is like crazy. I got to shave this crap off.
It is crazy. And what's funny about that is that Cameron and I made a bet during the pandemic. And if I won, he had to shave a mohawk. And sadly, I did not win.
It suits you, though. It looks good on you. Like I did one speaking event with my mohawk, and I was so insecure. I felt like people were looking at me going, no, 50-year-old guy in a mohawk. No, it's not good. It doesn't work on him, blah, blah, blah. But it works on you, dude.
Well, I appreciate that. And what's funny is the only reason I have it in the first place, I mean, I have it for different reasons now, but the reason I got it in the first place is because I was shaving my head for years, and I let it grow back for 4 months. And I didn't like it as it was growing back because I'm losing hair, and I was like, I don't like it. So I started to shave it, and I got this real clean line, and I thought, I wonder what it would be like if I had a mohawk. But I was so insecure staring at myself in the mirror alone to even put a mohawk on myself that I had this internal dialogue of, this is bullshit. I'm not allowed to be this insecure about doing that alone. Yeah. And so it was this challenge to myself to just do it. And that was it.
Awesome. Which there's a story, right? And it's inspiring. And why have you kept it today?
Well, I think at this point it's brand, right? At this point, people do not forget it. I see people at events, and years later, I'll see them again, and they'll say, oh, I saw you at this event 3 years ago. And I don't have any, we might not have even talked, but it stood out and it was memorable. So I think that there's, as polarizing as it is, I think I lose some relationships from it. But many, many more, I have the memorability.
Yeah, no, I think you gain more by having it for sure. I was hoping that would be the answer, was branding. I think we forget sometimes how important branding is, and that we've got a moment in every part of the day to be branding. If someone was at my home office right now, I'm in my basement, but you can see I've got brand behind me. It's all about people. It's kind of fun to do the impossible, things that matter to me. But my truck has all the brands on it, almost like a NASCAR. I mean, my neighbors probably don't love it, but it gets noticed. And our franchise partners drive branded vehicles. Wow, One Day Painting, Shack Shine. Why not, when you're showing up at the mall, showing up at dinner, parking anywhere, why not have someone see your vehicle? People come up all the time and say, oh, I know you guys. What do you guys do? How much for this? And so remembering the importance of branding, again, another free tactic. I wear, part of the reason I started wearing hats, I've got, 20 different kinds of hats with the different brands and sayings, because if I'm spending time on Zoom, I want to make an impact and have a message. When I'm in the office, I wear these Converse, my Chucks that are branded with 1-800-GOT-JUNK or Shack Shine, whatever it might be. People can't see my feet right now, so it's not working. So that's why the hats.
Love it.
There you go.
We gotta get another blue. What's the blue hat? Blue hat with the junk truck on it.
Exactly. Yeah, it was 1-800-GOT-JUNK. I got
beautiful.
Wow, One Day, Shack Shine, hats for all the brands.
Beautiful. Well, that actually introduces an interesting question for me. So you have, you spend all this time on branding, and one of the, as a larger company, that's easier to stomach allocating a significant amount of budget or time to, and by the way, at many different stages of the business, time is budget, right? Your bandwidth is constrained and you don't know what to do next, or you've got a million initiatives you could do. Your investment of time is the alternative to spending the budget. But branding with your money or time versus direct response is a choice. So, how do you think about the allocation of either time or financial resources towards branding versus something that you're going to get an immediate call from, an immediate response from?
To me, branding is a long game. I mean, it really is. For years and years and years, I would hear people, I still do today once in a while, people go, oh yeah, you're the company that parks their truck at 16th and Arbutus, an intersection in Vancouver. That was my first parking spot in 1989. I had a truck there for probably 5 years. People remember it, driving by it every single day over and over. That's a long game. And I think branding, the combination for us of free press, radio, digital, whatever it is, the more it's interesting to be able to live in a world where you can measure so much with ads and go, my Facebook is working, it's not working. I think it's hard to measure that long-term working side of things. You just don't know because things take a long time, multiple hits over and over and over before someone goes, oh yeah, I've got junk. Who am I going to call? 1-800-GOT-JUNK. So I think that it's a long game that people just need to be consistent with. It's the same as your hair. You said people will meet you and go, oh yeah, 3 years ago, I remember meeting you at a conference. You don't remember meeting them because they look just like any other Jane or Joe. And you look different and it stands out and it's memorable, and that's branding. So I think that as a company, my brands are better. My time is spent with our brands on the long-term side of things versus the short-term gain.
That's tough to argue. And if you need to keep the lights on and you need to keep growing the business and you have limited time or funds, so, let's look at practical application of when you're, let's say 2 to 10 million and you want more franchisees and you want to, or 10 to 20, right? In that range, did you have direct response initiatives either to bring on franchisees or to target specific consumers to use the service?
The only thing that worked for us in a direct response way was big storytelling, the Oprahs and so on. So Oprah made things light up for us like crazy because nobody knew our brand in most markets across North America. To contrast with the Ellen DeGeneres show, we were on Ellen twice this past year. One time of which I'm sitting there with Ellen getting interviewed and talking in 6 minutes, 7 minutes on stage. It was massive. Did it do anything for our sales on a daily, weekly basis? Nothing.
Wow.
We were on the Ellen DeGeneres show and we saw no noticeable increase. Why? Because when Oprah hit, similar audiences, right? The number one talk shows in America at the time. When we were on Oprah, it was one of those things where nobody knew us. So we had so much upside from where we were. We were a $9 million company when Oprah went out. When Ellen aired, we were in the 500 millions. So we're not going to notice that blip in calls that we would have noticed when we were on Oprah. But are people talking about Ellen? All the time. People are like, oh, you guys were on Ellen. What was that like? Wow, that was amazing. Saw that episode. Loved it. It has a big branding impact. But as the business gets so large, it's very, very different than when you're small.
So truly never a direct response consideration.
I mean, it's not that we don't do it, but it doesn't really work for us in a massive way. It's short term. We prefer the long term, and it doesn't have the direct response that we're looking for.
It seems like less fun too.
Yeah. I mean, we do a lot of digital stuff trying to incent and discounts and promotions, and it works a little bit, but I think you're also attracting people that want those discounts. And when your competition then has a better discount, they're switching to them. So it's that long-term branding possibility that I think we prefer.
Well, this all ties into, I think, every area of the business, but I want to talk at least for a few minutes about hiring and how you approach hiring staff. And if that's any different than franchisees, I don't know, but where do you find them? How do you source people in either consideration? Because that is not necessarily direct response, but it is a targeted effort.
Yeah.
And I would imagine brand plays into it, right? You're attracting people through the stories you tell.
Yeah.
But when you need to hire people, what's step one for you in that world?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, you sort of answered the question a little bit. The branding plays into it. The storytelling, the Oprah Winfrey's, the Ellen DeGeneres, that leads to people going, oh, this is the company that Oprah told you about and Ellen told you about and the Wall Street Journal. So that definitely helps. Getting the Newsweek most loved companies in America. again, those types of awards, and we've won all sorts of employment awards, help people go, wow, they must be good. The way we recruit these people once we found them is really a lengthy process, longer than most companies. I interviewed someone a few weeks ago, a marketing VP, and she said to me, I said, how many interviews have you had so far? And she said 14. And I'm like, wow, you're almost halfway. And that was a joke, but she was really towards the end, but she listed all the people she'd met with. And the reason we do that, in a market right now where it's hard to find people, some of them just go, you know what, this is too much, I'm out. I'm going to go with someone that has a faster recruiting process. But when they join O2E brands, any of our brands, they go, wow, I know it's the right thing. They know it's the right thing. Our success moving forward is massive. So finding the right people, treating them right is what it's all about. And how we find the right people is our interviewing is a little less formulaic and traditional, where some people are like, tell me about a time you made a decision like this and you did da, 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 da. And people give you the theoretical response back. We call our process the beer and barbecue test. It's like we're having a beer together. Do I find you interesting, interested? Is there a shared common passion? Do we have a zest for life and we want to get to know each other and find out what makes each other tick to see if it's a good fit culturally within our business? And so we really hire on attitude, train on skill. And so there's the beer and the barbecue component. The barbecue component is we ask people in our interviewing process, people that are interviewing candidates, how would they fit at a company barbecue? Would they fit in? We're not looking for everyone to be the same. We want lots of diversity of backgrounds, opinions, cultures, and so on. But we want to know that it just seems to fit. There's a good vibe of introverts, extroverts, people that are challenging the status quo. How would they fit at a company barbecue? Does it feel like a good party? Does it feel like the right group of people? And it's amazing when it works. And so we've simplified things, even though things might take longer and we're careful. We've also simplified the process, and it really has been effective for us.
When you say they might take longer, what are is it a multiple interview process? Is it multiple people in the company that are involved? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we often start with a group interview, which might be many candidates with one or two people interviewing them. We'll ask the same questions, some different questions, but you get a vibe around the table, so to speak. We used to do that back in the days of Cameron Herald, group hiring. We learned it from a company in Montreal that was a franchisor called Mad Science, and it's how they did things to save time. Let's bring everyone in at once, let's interview. And we were so enamored with how well it would stack people against each other. In an open office culture that we have, in a fun environment, we would see that people would joke around and have some banter in the room. We would see how they would present in front of the group, in front of other strangers, and how they would listen. And it's amazing. So we would start with a group interview, and then we go on to just multiple people interviewing to validate that we've got the right people. Now, hire an attitude, train on skill. If we're looking for someone who is a CFO, we want to make sure that our auditing firm has spent time with them and understands that they've got the right skills. But we're mostly looking for cultural fit and leadership.
You mentioned it. Today in 2020, September of 2022, it's a difficult hiring environment. If you need people, do you make the choice? And I guess this is both now and would you make this decision differently years ago? Do you make the choice to compromise on skill or value to get the person in, or just operate without them?
Never, ever, 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 ever do we compromise. And it's just not worth it. You compromise, you start to destroy your culture. And this is a longer story that I know we don't have time for, but I brought on someone as a president who was the wrong president for me. One person almost destroyed our entire business because I brought on the wrong person for me. And it was a challenge. So anytime we compromise, it can be a disaster. So we wait. Yeah. We wait.
Well, I think that's an important note. And I know that we're coming up on time here. So I really appreciate you carving out time to talk, man. It's awesome to get some of the story. And I'd love to dig in deeper at another point if you're around, man. But
for sure.
In the meantime, I know you wrote a book. Is there anything else you want to point towards other than BYOB, which is a great title for a book? Both your titles were. You had WTF, Willing to Fail, and BYOB, Build Your Own Business, Be Your Own Boss.
Yeah, nothing else I'd point to. I mean, anybody can go to put Brian Scudamore in Google and you'll get what you need in terms of content and social media connections and so on. But I'm passionate about the books. I lose money on each book, but I am passionate about the difference it makes in storytelling and sharing with people what's worked. We didn't invent everything. We learned it from others. And we've made a lot of mistakes, as WTF, Willing to Fail, will attest to. But I love seeing people start their own business, and BYOB investigates which path is right for you and should you actually even be a business owner. But I've chosen the best career path in the world for me. Love what I do. Love getting to meet and reconnect with people like you, Brad. So thank you so much for having me, and love to come back another time.
Awesome. Brian, thanks so much, man.
Thank you.
If you learned one thing on this episode, share it with another entrepreneur. They need to hear it. Also subscribe so that new episodes just show up on your phone. It's a lot easier that way. And if you want the really good stuff, check out our free BAM! Tactics and Strategies course. It's where we curate the best tips, tricks, and tools that our guests know, whether they've shared them on the podcast or not. Just go to beyondamill.com. You'll also find previous episodes and show notes at beyondamill.com.